farmers.
Thousands of farmers.
Hundreds of thousands of farmers.
Farmers have intensified their agitation against the contentious
Agricultural reform laws.
These are visuals that you can see coming from the Haryana-Delhi border. Near the Delhi border,
The mood on the ground is changing. Let's debate.
टीयर गैस का पहले गोले ये टीयर गैस से गोले दागे गए, ये टीयर गैस से गोले
सरकार से हमने लड़ना क्यों है? लड़ाई तो होती है दूसरे जो देशों के साथ, ये तो हमारी घरेलू है, ये तो हम अपना हक मांगने आए हैं किसान।
The philosophical value of nonviolence, ahimsa, can be traced through literature as old as 4th century BC in parts of Asia and Greece. In all these writings, the core ideology of violence is strongly connected to avoidance of violence, to refrain from harming others through use of actions or words. Around the 20th century, this philosophy developed into something concrete, as a counter-strategy, as a method of resistance, as the core of civil movements to achieve social justice and social transformations. It became much more common for people to attain change by the means of non-violent measures that are inclusive and participatory, that advocate for the rights and well-being of the most vulnerable and marginalized populations of the communities. But despite many successful examples from around the world, the mechanism by which nonviolent actions do well are underexplored. Through this video, we attempt to investigate and understand the domains of nonviolent struggles that stand out and ensure justice, ensure victory. Let's look at one of the most recent examples of nonviolent resistance, an immeasurable display of courage, democratic expressions, and brotherhood shown by the farmers in Delhi, India. In September 2020, the central government of India declared 3 laws related to agricultural produce and their sales. These 3 farm laws intended to promote agriculture and globalize the industry, making it easier for small farmers to gain direct access to big buyers. But a large section of the Indian farmers argued that the laws broadly opened the agricultural market to privatization, price exploitation, and obstructed their independence and financial protection. In a country where close to 58% of the population's livelihoods are directly dependent on agriculture, these new farm laws were seriously concerning. The farmers demanded repeal of the 3 anti-farmer laws. Their protests began from the northern states of India, Punjab and Haryana, in September 2020. But it took a more concrete shape when farmers, their unions, and leaders joined the movement from other states too. They staged numerous demonstrations, some sporadic, some collective, and some massive, like the Rail Roko strike, Delhi Chalo March, and the march to the historic Red Fort on India's National Republic Day, when tens of thousands of farmers from across the country marched on their tractors and on foot to the national capital. As the movement progressed, more farmers joined in, living in makeshift shelters and camps hundreds of kilometers away from their homes. The men and women carried forward their fight to justice, regardless of the weather and unwary of their comfort. An army of volunteers and supporters contributed selflessly to this movement by bringing food items to sustain the community kitchens and by providing basic necessities like drinking water, and sanitation services. After more than 11 rounds of talks between the government and the unions and demonstrations in various forms, in late November 2021, the central government finally repealed all 3 farm laws.
After 15 months long agitation, the day of farmers' Ghar Wapsi has now arrived.
The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has announced the scrapping of agricultural reform laws.
3 कृषि कानूनों को वापस लेने का, रिपील करने का निर्णय लिया है।
Although the farmers adopted non-violent strategies to carry forward their movement, they were still met with violence from authorities, who used tear gases, water cannons, dug up roads, and used iron nails to stop the protesters. This reinforces an acknowledgement made by Martin Luther King Jr. that nonviolent resistance does not mean violence will not occur, because social justice is almost never voluntarily handed over by the oppressors. Even though nonviolent protesters do not inflict violence, they are still at the receiving ends. It is also said that political regimes founded on violence leads to reoccurrence of violent conflicts. Hence, nonviolent resistance provides an alternative to break this vicious cycle. The farmers' protest ended up being one of the largest in the history of India. The victory did not only signify the repeal of the anti-farmer laws, rather it displayed support from people across India and across the globe who stood against anti-democratic practices, violation of human rights, and fractures created by economic and social divisions in the country. What truly worked to gather support for the movement was that it stayed non-violent and apolitical. Without any strong affiliation with political ideology, the movement stayed focused on building coalitions with various groups of society and gathering support at a large scale. Mainstream media and social media have played a huge role in expanding the movement. Responses on digital platforms and social medias for the protests especially swarmed in after global pop star Rihanna, climate activist Greta Thunberg, and lawyer-author Meena Harris posted tweets extending their support. However, these women and many others who spoke up about the protests in international platforms faced threats and intimidation on social media. Extremists went as far as burning their pictures on the streets of India. But one thing the incident did was put Indian farmers' movement on the global map. It spiked interest and support of many on the national as well as international levels. But while on one side media played a positive part to expand recognition of the movement, another side backlashed. Several mainstream news channels and online news portals discredited the true intention of the protests and blamed the farmers as having hidden political agendas. Failing to highlight the attack on farmers' democratic rights, they rather portrayed farmers as angry, impatient, and unprepared. The role of media is therefore often compared to a double-edged sword. It can be an ally in promoting a social movement, but it can also be used as a toxic and manipulative tool against the movement. By the end of the protest, a few other demands set forth by the farmers remained unfulfilled. Although the farmers' movement throughout the year was not able to fulfill all of those demands, the movement was still able to unveil many economic and social aspects of the millions of farmers whose livelihood depended on agriculture. The outcomes of the protest reinstate that nonviolent resistance is not just limited to causing no violence. It includes a drive to distribute power and change power relations and social structures. Evidences like these show that nonviolent strategies are more effective in achieving social justice and are more respectful of human rights and dignity in the long run.